A very warm welcome to everyone into the Sangha Live session today. And I really hope this finds you doing well and landing well into the last session that we have together for this week. Last of the morning sessions exploring a little bit around these teachings and practices that we've been bringing into being. Along the lines of imagination, imagine that we have as the theme. And also a little bit around this line of the poem. It's everything that we see and seem, but a dream within a dream. That there's something that we wake up from with these practices that we do together. And there's also something that we wake up to the possibilities that are there for us. And I hope that there's this feeling of waking up, whether that's quite literally, we're coming out of the residue of sleepiness. Maybe it's early in the morning for us, maybe it's not. But also this sense of waking up into our possibility space where we have a little bit more that we can guide, shape, and do than maybe we had in the dream space for us. So you're not dreaming if you're seeing me looking like I'm in a different space. I've actually moved to a retreat center where I'll be teaching a retreat, guiding a retreat later on today. Still in Israel, a little bit further north, and I'm really both looking forward to our session today, how that's kind of lifted perhaps a little bit by my different location, and also there's quite a lot to share on this last of our meeting spaces. A few ideas I want to at least suggest as avenues of further exploration. So, a bit late for introductions perhaps, but I'm Nathan, and I'm easily found at dependentorigination.org. And I'm mentioning that because that might also be helpful if you get confused by what we're speaking about today. Okay, so someone's saying they can't see my video yet. Can't see an image. So hearing voice without image. Is that the case for anyone else? I can try a few things to fix that, but I'll wait to hear that it's a common experience. Okay, other people have it. So as always, I'm gonna in this case, I'm gonna also host and lead the Dharma exploration. I'll give a teaching. We'll have a meditation. We'll open to questions. But I'll also try and respond to any kind of tech things. So first step, refresh your browser if that's not happened before. And try a different browser if you're coming for the first time. If you're watching on mobile, it gets more complicated. You need to access it through the app. There's a Circle app. You can search on your app stores for this. Okay, so first step along the technological dance. So if you would allow it, then I'm going to express a little bit of the theme that's related to this. So I've been playing with words a little bit, playing with words that end in "sum." We've had presume and how that assumes a posture, a shape, a way of relating, and then that affects what we then consume. We actually consume our presumed assumptions, right? That's what we eat. That's what we fight against. That's what we embattle ourselves with. And that, when left to less skillful, but quite commonly habitual patterns, that leads to dukkha, to distress, to stress, to reactivity, to contraction, to painfulness, to sadness, to suffering, to all of that, right? When our presumptions, our assumptions are more skillful and more wholesome, then we actually lead our way out of this. The possibility for us actually is to be subsumed in dukkha, right? To really be taken below. Yeah. So subsume, so assume, this take is to be taken down, to taken below, taken under, right? Dragged under. And we can be subsumed in dukkha in that way. But equally, we could say that these teachings are actually an invitation to subsume our appetite for unskillful living into ethical expressions, to subsume our misinterpretations of existence and actually absorb them into the skillful ways, right? We retake from below, we absorb, you know, we subsume into love, right? Into harmony, into peacefulness. We engage our depth being in that sense. We get deep. We come allowed to come under, to understand. And over time, we can see that, this is going to support skillful creating of our well-being. Yeah, we've mentioned a few ways that we can start to do that, different ways of breathing, different ways of relating, different ways of inviting in, welcoming, those kinds of things. Kind of touched on it very delicately, that can actually support us to move into a mode that, maybe at the beginner level hints of a bodhisattva vow, to actually practice for the well-being of all beings, including ourselves, but all beings. And that opens out something wider, which is kind of invites us actually then to see the possibility of not just trying to get my condition a bit better, but really actually transforming everybody's dukkha. And there's a practice for this called Tong Len. And maybe we'll get there today. Maybe we'll get that far along. Tibetan practice, Tong-Len, Tong Len. But in short, I want to make sure that it's also really accessible to everyone. The Dharma is about meeting well. It's about meeting our experience well. And we're going to tap into this, but start with the easy, start with the accessible, start with what's available to us already. It might be just release that tension. I can actually soften there, right? It might be that we allow things to be here, we welcome things to be here. Yeah. And it might be that we actually decide to see things differently. Yeah, I will see as anicca, as inconstant, as fluid, as flowing. What I just before was starting to see as fixed, as rigid, as solid from its own side. Yeah. So it's about meeting well. And we joked this before, but it's helpful to kind of remember these things. Jokes are here to help us, embed these things into our mind. The Buddha offered us relationship advice. So is there a different way you could relate to your experience? Yeah. I remember my partner Zohar, her mother was saying to us one time, "Why do you always talk about suffering? That's the thing about Buddhism. I don't see why you always want to keep talking about suffering and all of this." And of course, it's to understand that this can happen to us, but understand also is like to take from below, yeah, to stand under something and support. It's like this. And also then to support not being walked over. Yeah. You don't understand. It's like, and it's also not to walk over others and other things, to take things for granted, to take things, as if they're for me. Yeah. Different ways of relating. And at times we talk about suffering a lot because we can really get pulled under into stress and distress. It's almost like a riptide, those can be quite dangerous tides that kind of pull you out from the shore if you're swimming. This cultural, this evolutionary pull that pulls us into dukkha, away from the beach, away from the other shore, and having to find our way. That we don't get there from fighting that. You tire yourself fighting against that. But it's also not just a question of giving up. Yeah, it's actually a skillful engagement. It's a skillful engagement. And this fight, flight, or give up kind of modalities that we can get ourselves into is actually to forget something really fundamental about dukkha. Really fundamental about dukkha. And this is where we get into dependent origination. Dukkha is conditioned. It is conditioned. It needs conditioned. And what we participate in as it comes through is the reconditioning of it, the resumption of it. So if something is conditioned, it can be reconditioned in a different way. It can be decommissioned. So actually, I'm not going to relate that way. I'm not going to get tight. I'm not going to get rejective. I'm not going to grab on. I'm not going to push away. Yeah. I'm not going to support negative emotions. I'm not going to support unskillful conceptions of the world, saying, things exist from their own side. And all modes of meditation are actually undoing the conditions. Yeah. Because dukkha is conditioned, we can undo those conditions, not redo those conditions, not be subsumed, right? But as things get difficult for us in those moments, a friend of mine was talking about surfing recently, and that you see a really big wave coming and it's too big for you to ride. You have to head into that wave. Yeah. You have to head into and say, okay, this is the conditions. And let's not get reactive. Let's not try and escape. Let's try and turn towards and work with this skillfully. Yeah. Because there's such a level of reactivity in us a lot of the time, a lot of rejection, actually, it's like we have kind of quite a strong bodyguard element to our experience, then acceptance actually goes a long way, right? Really helpful. And it can be helpful actually to have a simple instruction. Actually, just accept this. And kind of a stand in for letting go. But it sometimes encourages a bit too much a letting go of effort, a letting go of creativity, a letting go of the richer kind of possibilities of how we can be. Maybe it doesn't go quite as deep or as far as these teachings were suggesting. Yeah. But it actually stops the resuming cycle of non-acceptance and that kind of level of reactivity. So it's helpful, but it might not be appropriate for the whole of our practice. And certainly, I would say, not for the whole of our life. Now, we have passions towards things, towards values. In life, we have problems that need letting go of and others that need a different kind of wise response. And if our mode is I just let go, I just accept, it won't do for both. And it isn't a teaching of the Buddha. Yeah, the Buddha hesitated because this teaching was so deep, so profound, so delicate, so difficult to actually grasp in an easy way. Yeah. And so, we have this jokey phrase, only a dead fish always goes with the flow. Yeah. And the Buddha was not a dead fish teacher. He was a living fish teacher. And sometimes that salmon goes up the stream against adversity. Right? So we just remember this. In life, there is dukkha. In fact, there is dukkha samudaya, a dependently arising dukkha, stress, distress. Right? And our appropriate attention is to see that. See, this is conditioned. Right? Tending to how things come into and out of being. And that's what our practice shows us. It's like, if I just stop and I breathe, I change that pattern. If I soften and release, I can change that pattern. And sometimes the only gear that we are taught is actually how to calm, how to soothe, how to soften. And today I want to invite a different way, is maybe how to brighten, how to enliven, how to delight in bodily life. It might work for some of us, it might not work for all of us. But if it does, that's interesting. So things are conditioned certain ways, and we can have more ways of doing this. Now, when we start talking about, this is conditioned, and everything is conditioned, every appearance, for this to appear this way, it needs presumptions, it needs assumptions, it needs consumptions, it needs resumptions, it needs all of that. And we can get subsumed into that, and we can also get subsumed then into confusion. It's all just dependent, there's no thing there, then who am I? Yeah. And we say, let's just give up. But inaction is also an action. It also enacts things. It also brings things into being. So the question is actually rather, how is this? How is this activity? And And paying attention is an activity because there's assumptions and presumptions embedded in it. How is this bringing about stress, and how are different ways bringing about well-being? And there we bring the head and we bring the heart together into our practice. And that, for me, is what it means to be waking up from the dream, within the dream, to the dream, and staying awake, like a conscious dreamer, then choosing well, meeting well, also conceiving well. Yeah. There's a lovely phrase that says, act your way into a new way of thinking. So, like, do the easy first. And often that's going to be the body release, relax. And then maybe the verbal shaping of our thinking. May you be well. May I be well. And finding how we can pay attention in ways that support the release, the welcome, the beauty, the compassion that we want to see in the world, right? In the Tao Te Ching, they have this phrase, do the difficult while it's still easy. Same idea, come to what's easy. But ultimately, we're aiming for something grand, something large, something radical, but getting there step by step. Yeah. Getting there in community also, the primacy of spiritual friendship. And a friendship internally and externally. Yeah? Can we make friends with ourselves, all those aspects of ourselves that appear, which isn't to say, just allow unskillful, greedy, aversive patterns. No, we understand, like we're in a committee of the mind. It comes up with different voices. We have different aspects of ourselves. We're also an internal community, but we kind of chair that meeting. We encourage those qualities, encourage those voices, getting to know from that place collectively, internally collectively, externally collectively, with that wider base, wider support, wider intention of practice. And see, where does happiness come from? Upon what does happiness depend? The way I act, the way I see, the way I hold the body. And so in response to my partner Zohar's mother, we're not just teaching dukkha, we're not just talking about suffering, we're also talking about happiness. So talking about what does that depend on? And I think it depends on knowing why we want to practice and practicing in ways that bring that about. But also for something radical, a real culture of awakening. And so we're not so much interested in the rebirth of beings, but of communities, of participation, and not making this so personal. So that maybe then we're allowed and supported, and when it's possible, we can even breathe in our pain, and even breathe in another's pain. And maybe breathe out, offer out the well-being that we've been cultivating. And for me, that's a beautiful vision of this path. And as we've done before, we'll open to more kind of questions and inquiries around that in a while. But for now, let's have a meditation together. And maybe just for the moment, releasing any contractions that have built up. Letting the breath soothe and settle, as we might be familiar with. Letting the posture and the presence of our body bring us into this wakeful presence. And we can actually have a moment of relaxing, but particularly relaxing reactivity, the grabbing, the pushing. For now, it doesn't serve. Instead, we can have a bit of happiness, free from demand. You're allowed to be interested in your experience. You're allowed to let go of disturbance, pushing, pulling, grabbing, holding, demanding, owning. How would it be to see this self that's thinking as just one of a community of beings that pop up in this body, heart, mind? Ah, it's this character. Thank you. We open into a space of something wider. We are many in here, many in this committee of the heart mind, many in this community. There's also a member of this community that's interested in how this present experience is appearing, how the softening, the relaxing of tension can support a brighter, interested attention. Fun of noticing, this character has come, is it softens our sense of identification, our solidity of being one thing or another. So it makes that blame a little less easy to land. This is what's coming in. Are there other voices in the heart mind? Other qualities? Maybe they're quieter, less demanding. We're able to welcome in the next sensations of breath or sound or taste. We're able to stay with, we have the patience, the tolerance. So we can see, we can be subsumed into a self view, and we can also rise above or open out wider. There's a flow of character that we might identify with, we might disidentify with. But either way, we will relate with and relate well. So in a way, what we're practicing is noticing what often gets taken as self, as just aspects of self appearance, characters in a committee, and supporting that delicacy of attention and interest, that character. Doing that for well being kind of has an element of peacefulness to it. That's beautiful. I also mentioned that Might be ways we can practice that bring more brightness, aliveness, maybe even joy, fun, perhaps. And so there's a suggestion for the next part of the meditation to explore what that might look like. And I'll make some suggestions, but they're in a sense of playfulness. Yeah. So if you want to engage with them in that way, you're very, very welcome. We're going to use the breath because I just want to keep it relatively simple. And you might notice that the breath is something that's quite responsive to the condition of the heart mind. Responds to the physical needs, the regulation of the breath according to, how we breathe and pant as we go up the stairs, many stairs, too many stairs. And also it responds to our emotional state. Fear has a breathing pattern, excitement has a breathing pattern, falling asleep has a breathing pattern. So let's try for some enlivening breathing. We breathe in quite long. Maybe breathe in almost as if it's coming up from the belly. Maybe you can encourage a count within the breath. So it's like count up to about 6, 7, maybe 8. Really big in breath. Until you feel really full of breath. And then that count reverse, go down in the count, maybe spread out. Breathing is radiating out. Down to 0 or down to 1 and then back up again. You don't have to move a lot of air. Don't feel you have to hyperventilate here. It can be very, very slow and the breath barely moving, but while there is that sense of brightening and filling and expanding, radiating. In a way, the breathing in, it's a bit like filling up a balloon. Sometimes you can feel the chin lifts a little bit as it really stretches up. And then we kind of stay quite big and the breath and the count go down. We don't necessarily shrink from that fullness. Play with that yourself. So that might be enough by way of instruction for some of us. And feel free. This will be recorded. You can come back for further steps later or not at all. And you can come back to normal breathing at any time. Don't feel you have to do these things. What about if we really kind of call out the count internally? Like we don't need to make any external sound, but almost like we're calling it to someone far away. Like 1, 2. There's an energy in that we're putting into it, calling it out, opening that space. It's a loving shout, yeah. It's not a celebratory, inviting. Some of us are quite visual. We might imagine or see the numbers. And if you do, and even if you don't, how about that they get brighter? Or like fireworks, they boom. Maybe for most of us, this can just be the last round. Going up big and coming down big. Let's just have a few present moments, breathing, listening, sensing. And you can decide for yourself if you want to carry on playing with brightening through the breath or soothing through the breath or the sounds. Whatever you're doing, have a sense that you're guiding your experience towards well-being. The point here is we can affect our experience, can brighten, expand, enliven, just through the way we pay attention, different ingredients we bring in. And we can also soothe, relax. What's needed, what's helpful. Noticing what we see, noticing how we seem to be in this dream within a dream that we can impact and influence, play our part. And for the last 5 minutes or so of our meditation together, it's another invitation. If you feel ready, and we're going to do it gently, and at any point you can stop and return to a practice that you know well or ones that we just mentioned. A little bit of this Tong Len, so called giving and receiving. It's a radical reversal of what we normally allow in and what we normally allow out. Normally we only want to allow in the good, the beautiful, the light, the pleasurable. And we normally resist allowing that back out again. We want to keep that. And we want to guard ourselves against the sadness, the pain, the darkness of the world. Is that the best way to be? Is that the most beautiful way to be? Is that the most liberated way to be? What if we were to play to practice, letting in the dark, the sad, the painful, and radiating out the light, the pleasure, the joy, goodness. That's the game, that's the dance. If you want to do it, we'll do it gently. Maybe there's a being you know who's struggling. Could be stress, can be sickness, can be emotional, can be circumstances of their life. Breathing in the dark, the painful, the sadness, into your being as much as you feel to imagine that you can. And in some incredible way, it transmutes, it transforms into brightness and light and love within you, and you radiate that back out. Breathing in the dark, the sticky, the difficult. Transforming and breathing out your goodness, your clarity, your love. We could just come to the outer edges of our being and just play on those millimeters of letting in a little bit, letting out. And we can also just imagine really going wild with this, if we're ready. Maybe it's the challenges of particular beings, or even of the condition of the whole planet, the health of the planet. Individuals or collectives. How would it be to breathe in what's difficult? To hold, take from them, as if we can take it from them. And in return, we give all we can give. We can give, not more than we can give, but all that we can give. Any wisdom, any joy, any kindness, any love. And in the last moments now, just noticing how your experience is, how you see, how you seem within this dream, within a dream. And with a sense of gratitude for yourself, of what you've supported to come into being. And with gratitude to each other for what we've supported to be seen as possible. even if not doable. Yeah. And we'll begin to transition the last part of our session together. A time for any questions, any reflections, any clarifications. So our last kind of chance for being together in this particular way, at this particular time. So as always, I hope what I've shared is accessible and you feel free to pick it up, continue working with it, turn it around, work and explore from your own side, co-create, bring into being, and also put aside. Yeah, if you like other practices more, do those. Really, that saying, for goodness sake, do what's good for you, please. Yeah. And also, let's see our practice as doing good for others. What really opens out into the realm of possibilities for us. Two ways, we can underestimate what we can do, what we can become. And I just want to mention again, and for the final time, that this is a freely offered thing. Yeah, I don't take anything directly from anyone to be here. What I receive is what comes through the donations from the community here, and part of what you can give in the donations will go to Sangha Live, and part will come to me. For donations that happen, I think from when we began Monday morning until Friday tonight, kind of midnight, those donations will come to me. Donations given later will go to Sangha Live and whoever else is teaching at that time. Yeah. So it's also great. Give, support, keep these things going. This is not exchange. Yeah. I hope we understand this. It's not, I've done something for you, give me something in return. Yeah. It's, if I've done something for you, I've probably also done something for me, and you've done much for me. Let's get out of this debt mentality way of thinking. It's very, very, very unhealthy, very, very, very unhelpful. Instead, it's not, oh, now I'm responsible, I have to give, but actually, I can give, I want to give. Yeah. And this tonglen, this giving, this receiving, I've taken and I appreciate and I want others to have. Let's push it out. Let's push it into the world. Let's make something from this. And in a way, it's helpful to support what we want to see more of. And if you appreciate my teachings, my practice, my sharing in this way, then you have that possibility to directly support me there and support Sangha Life. I wanted to mention, which before we get onto the questions, there's an event coming up tomorrow. Maybe I can just copy it in. That you can find out about through the Sangha Life Connect. It's Christopher Titmus sharing a bit about his experience with parenting, grandparenting, and awakening in the midst of all of that. I don't have a direct link to share with you, but hopefully you can find it in the community events people page. Yeah. So just kind of passing that on. If you like the idea of our practice actually coming into more engagement with the world, you might actually like something that I helped co-create a while ago called Sangha Seva, Meditation in Action, as a way that we can bring more of our practice into our life through positive actions. And it's one vision that we could have that kind of relates to what we were doing is we could actually see it as Tonglen in action. Yeah. We actually go to places that are stressed, that are suffering. It's part of the reason why I come to Israel and Palestine, is to bring Israelis and Palestinians together in community, in possibility, space that meditation, I hope, begins to open up for us and allow us to be able to interact with what feels like something we don't want to be there, and often then relate to through blame, shame, ignorance, patterning. So, yeah. So some sharing in the chat here that Tonglen is a beautiful practice for them, and yeah, there's a question here. There's also one from yesterday, but maybe yeah, just to relate a little bit to the Tonglen. So Vanessa's question is, could I say more about the transformation part of Tonglen? I previously had a difficult experience with this, taking in and it settling in me, which caused dukkha. Yeah. So firstly, wow, right? Isn't it so interestingly powerful? And what does that say about perception? That if I say I'm going to breathe in the darkness and I start to feel dukkha inside myself, am I literally breathing in the dukkha? Is there less dukkha somewhere else in existence because now I have it in me? Um, it's so profound, and it really ties into this thing. Is this a dream within a dream that I can influence in these ways? But yes, perception is a dream within a dream. It's that powerful. It's that significant. That's the teaching within Tonglen, right? That's wow. It really makes a difference if I imagine that this is possible, and it feels possible. Why does it feel possible? Magical realist thinking, yeah, like the magical realist novelists. You can look up that stuff if you're not aware of it. But I think yeah, it's really helpful then actually to imagine actually this. I'm a transformer of this stuff. I can turn that around, turn it into fairy dust. I can turn pain into pleasure. I can do that, and I also have that perception. Yeah. So it's everything we see and seem, how we seem. It's that's in that dream too. Yeah. Right. And then, Rivka's just written in there, like, what if the horror outside is too much to take in? Right. And at times it feels too much. Right. So this is such an essential point, is step by step. That's why we did it gently. That's why we maybe did it at the periphery. And for some of us, we felt, no, there is no horror that's too much to take in. This is how the world is. And I want to transform that. I want to open to that because they felt ready. Yeah. When you go to the gym, you work out on zero weights. Yeah, you just hold the things. You learn the technique. You learn. Oh, look, I could do that. And then over time, what it happens is we get stronger. Our capacity increases. Yeah, but there's no sense that you have to do this. Yeah, and there's no sense that meditation is this or it's not this. And that's why we're saying, like, well, what if we practice in a way that brightens and enlivens and excites and enthuses, and we absorb ourselves into well-being by what? Counting breaths and that thing. Yeah, maybe that worked for some of us, maybe it didn't. It's all of these different ways that we can work. And then we might say, ultimately, why am I practicing, right? As we started with, the intention. What do I want to see more of? And am I practicing in a way that brings that more into being? Or am I actually practicing ways that don't? Maybe they actually dull me. Yeah. They just take the edge off experience. And they make me think, well, I have to give up the things that I really want. It's all about renunciation, giving up without replenishing, without replacing through our experience. So there's a lot there, and it's in a way, it's kind of, maybe it feels like an argument for something. Yeah. But it's kind of, interesting. Like the Buddha was saying, there's a lot more possible for us than we imagine. And so, whatever we imagine, we have to imagine that there's a bit more than that. Yeah. Yesterday, Jane asked a question. I became aware of involuntary changes in my breathing, becoming fairly fast or very deep and wide at one point. And I found this a bit disconcerting. Yeah. It's nice that you only found it a bit disconcerting. Yeah. It could have been a lot. And, can you shed any light on this? And so I think that kind of relates a little bit to what we were exploring today. Yeah. The way we breathe is dependent on many conditions, right? The physical needs, the emotional needs. And these change as meditation deepens, right? Maybe the needs of the body become, I don't need that much breath. And it becomes lighter. Yeah, maybe the condition of the heart isn't so agitated and it becomes diffuse, or it becomes wide. And if the disconcerting principle is I'm not in control, right, it can help to understand I don't need to be in control. That's what it says. And maybe I can support things. I can participate in this. Yeah, it's not like, oh, I'm not in control. There's nothing I can do. But it's like, I'm doing something. I don't fully understand what levers and dials and things I'm pushing and pulling on and turning. But this is actually happening this way. And what's my role? To bring the heart and the mind to support well-being, to support beauty, to support awakening, to support everyone, everywhere, to live the kind of life they want to live, including myself with that. So thank you for imagining with me and seeing through the realms of what we can imagine together and what we can bring into being. It's been a real pleasure to be sharing this space with you, and I'm already looking forward to the next time that we'll be together. And if it feels helpful or in any way and you want to be in contact with me, you can find me through sangaseva.org, dependentorigination.org, and all of that. So yeah, wish you well. May your lives find beauty, and may we all wake up. Take care.